Hello, good evening. Hello.
Good
Good evening.
evening.
Right, okay. So how are you all today? Good?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah. And uh, now you all are in my educational technology class as well. Am I right? Or it's a different set?
Yes, ma'am.
It's you all, no? Right. Did you receive your assignment?
Yes, ma'am. Yesterday we
Ah,
received.
right, okay. You received it. Then what about psychology? That's the thing. For psychology also that I have to set an assignment. Last time it was a presentation that I got them to do. And this time, whether it's a written assignment or a presentation, PowerPoint presentation, I have to double check it with the campus. And I will let you know, right? If it is a presentation, I will send you a written assignment on giving all the instructions about the presentation. So we can discuss it next week. And if it is a written assignment, I will be sending you the written assignment. Okay.
Okay, ma'am.
So by next week that we can finalize that. Until then that you can start working on the educational technology one. Okay. Now, can you just give me a briefing about what I did last time for psychology? Nilakshi?
Yes, ma'am. We did
Yeah.
operant conditioning theory, and we did social
Um,
learning theory. We did, and after
Albert
that you give
Bandura's social learning
yes,
theory as well.
yes,
Yeah.
with the
After
social.
that,
After that you
that's
gave
all.
you discuss some questions about uh, the classical and operant learning theory.
Right. Okay. The Gagne's information processing theory, I did know.
Pardon, ma'am?
Robert Gagne's information
No,
processing theory.
no,
No.
no.
Learning theory එකකට ඒක කරේ නැහැ නේද?
Yes.
එහෙමනම් අපි අද Robert Gagne's information processing theory කියන theory එකත් it's also a learning theory. We need to
Oh,
discuss, okay?
oh,
Because it's a cognitive learning theory. So it's very important to discuss cognitive learning theory as well. So we are going to discuss Robert Gagne's information processing theory. And then we are done with the unit learning, okay? And then
okay.
we will move on to motivation. That is the outline for the day. Okay,
Okay, ma'am.
Okay, right. Let me now share. We are still in learning. So in the unit learning, we discuss the Woolfolk definition of learning, the 4 knots to look at what learning is all about. You all remember that. Then we discuss behavioral learning theories. Learning is our reaction to our environment. Learning is habit formation through repetition, which is termed as simple learning. And in behavioral learning, simple learning, we discuss classical conditioning by Ivan Pavlov, uh, operant conditioning by B.F. Skinner, and then we discuss social cultural learning theory of Vygotsky by looking at MKO and ZPD. Am I right?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah. Then we discuss Albert Bandura's social learning theory. In Albert Bandura's social learning theory, learning through observation. So for us to observe and imitate, we have models in our society. They are live models, verbal instructional models, and symbolic models. And then just because that the models are there and we observe and learn, it is not that simple. There are 4 stages of learning to occur in order to observational learning to happen. The 4 stages are attention, retention, reproduction, and motivation. Then we have one last theory. There are other theories, learning theories, but we are looking at one last theory today. That is cognitive learning theory or complex learning. So to discuss cognitive learning theory or complex learning, we take one theory, that is Robert Gagne's information processing theory of learning. Once it is done, we are done with the unit learning. Then second half of the session would be the big topic motivation. When I start the big topic, the new unit motivation, I will tell you what I'm going to discuss. Okay. So now it is Gagne's information processing theory. Let me actually open my PowerPoint first. Okay. You have to give me a minute. Right. It's here. Okay. Right. Let me share. Okay. You can see, no? That PowerPoint I'm sharing?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah.
Yes,
So now
ma'am.
we are looking at another learning theory, information processing theory by Gagne. When it comes to information processing theory by Gagne, you can actually say that it is a cognitive learning theory. It's a cognitive learning theory. You know, cognitive school of thought. In cognitive school of thought, we know that learning is a matter of a cognition. We actually discuss the topic cognition. What is cognition? If I ask you now, you have done it. What is cognition? Don't say you don't know. We had that unit cognition with us. What is cognition? It's a process of what? Starting with sensation, and then perception, and then memory, and then problem solving, logical thinking, creativity, etc. Am I right? Didn't we discuss that?
You discussed, ma'am.
Yeah. So cognitive learning theory, they actually think learning is a matter of our cognition, our internal mental processes. What are the internal mental processes? Sensation, the information we receive through the five senses, and then perceiving them, giving them meaning and interpreting them, and then committing them to the memory, the three stages, and storing them. And we will be able to retrieve the information stored in the long-term memory in order to solve problems, in order to think logically and to be creative and to solve problems. So that is our internal mental process. So cognitive learning theorists actually uh, ground their learning theories on this belief of the cognitive capacities of the individual. So we call them not simple learning, complex learning, right? This is a complex, this is termed as complex learning. Learning is not just habit formation, as the behaviorists believe, right? Learning is not just observation, but learning includes the processes of sensation, perception, storing, retaining, and retrieving information from the memory and using them for problem solving, logical thinking. So we term it as complex learning. Is it okay? You understand?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah. So we are looking at Gagne. This is one of the cognitive learning theories. There are other theories as well, okay? But we are looking at Gagne's information processing theory because it's very much applicable to secondary education. As teachers, you will be benefited from the insights that you get from the information processing theory of Gagné. Okay. So if you take this information processing theory by Gagné, you know, learning is a matter of our internal mental capacities, sensation, perception, attention, memory, blah, blah, blah. So Gagné compares this internal mental process of learning to a computer, right? You know, the computer is fed with information and they are stored in the computer and they are processed. So humans actively process the information they receive from their sensors, sensory organs. We receive information and we actively process that information and store them in the long-term memory to be retrieved. So that process is compared to a computer by Robert Gagné. That is why it is actually termed as information processes. As the computer works, right? It is fed with information and they are stored and they can be retrieved when we want. That same process happens with the humans when they actively process information they receive through the 5 sensory organs. So that is the analogy he makes, right? So this, of course, is nothing new for you because in the unit cognition, we discuss sensation, perception, and then memory, the 3 stages of the memory, and then how they can be retrieved, semantically coded, and systematically stored information can be retrieved for problem solving, logical thinking, creativity, etc. That, of course, you're not new to it because we have discussed that. So this is it, right? Gagné believing that as a computer processes information, humans also actively process information, right? We discuss all these. The memory has 3 stages, the capacity and the duration. And if they are not actually rehearsed and practiced, what happens? They are forgotten. Yeah, we discussed this. Do you remember this? I ask you a question. Do you remember this?
Yes, madam.
Yeah. Others, only one respond. Others are silent, killers. Neither. මතකද cognition කියලා මේ unit එකේ අපි මේක කරා?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. එහෙමනම් what is new in this information processing model of learning by Gagné? Oh, it's not here. Oh, give me a second. It's removed. Okay, let me see. Don't save here then. I have to open my new one. Give me a second. Right, this is the one. Okay. Oh, cancel. Give me a second, okay? I'm locating the proper one. Right, this is the one. So, now look at this. So, Gagné's information, you can see the document I'm sharing. So, you know that this is, of course, nothing new for you. So you know it and we have discussed it already. So we don't have to actually discuss it again. But if you look at this is about the Gagne's information processing theory of learning. And we can discuss Gagne information processing theory of learning, which is based, grounded on the cognitive processes of the individual, right? Under three components. Under three components. What are these three components that we have to discuss to know Gagne's information processing theory? Taxonomy of learning outcomes. What is the first one? Taxonomy of learning outcomes. We have to discuss taxonomy of learning outcomes in order to understand what Gagne's information processing theory is about. And then we have to talk about conditions of learning. And we have to talk about 9 events of instruction. What are the 3 components of Gagne's information processing theory that we are going to discuss, please?
Cognitive domain, affective domain, and psychomotor domain.
No. These are the 3 components. What are the 3 components? Taxonomy of learning outcomes. Make a tama discuss kare naha api. What is the first component we are going to discuss? Taxonomy of learning outcomes. Then conditions of learning. Then 9 events of instruction. Okay. We will start with the simplest one, but the most important in a way, right? That is the first component of Gagne's information processing theory of learning. Conditions of learning. Oh, ඉන්න ගමන් ලියා ගන්න ඕනේ නැත්නම් ඔළුවට යන්නේ නැහැ. Conditions of learning. එතකොට that is for the first time Gagne is talking about, right? We as teachers should provide 2 main conditions fulfilled if learning to be taken place. If you want your students to learn, there are 2 conditions to be made available for them to actually learn and for you to facilitate their learning. So what are those 2 conditions of learning? The 2 conditions of learning are internal conditions of learning and external conditions of learning. Internal conditions and external conditions. If you want your students to learn, make sure that 2 conditions are actually met. The 2 conditions are the internal conditions and the external conditions. What is meant by internal and external conditions? We all know external conditions. As teachers, we make sure that we meet these external conditions. What are they? You write a lesson plan. You actually provide them with materials to study. You give them activities. You yourself is in front of the class explaining the subject matter. All these are external conditions needed for the learning to happen. We are very good at doing that and we are doing it. Am I right? Yeah, then what is internal conditions? Internal conditions are the conditions to be fulfilled within the learner. Something within the learner is there and that should be also met. So internal conditions are the prior knowledge, the existing knowledge, the learner possesses, and they are useful in understanding the today's new knowledge. They are the internal conditions. Internal conditions කියලා කියන්නේ already existing capabilities of the learner before the new learning begins that make up the internal conditions necessary for learning, right? For them to learn the new knowledge that you're going to present, they need to have some existing prior capabilities. Otherwise, they won't be able to actually grasp it. Whether they have that already in them is another condition that you have to make sure to be met. So internal conditions are actually what the capabilities that the learner should possess in order to proceed with the new knowledge, new learning. Now, for example, you want to teach them mathematics, uh, a sum, right? You're going to actually give them some sums in grade 3. Mala is 3 feet, Sama is 4 feet, and Bala is 7 feet. Who is the tallest? Who is the tallest? If not, I have 5 apples. I ate one. I gave 2 to my sister. My father gave me another 5 apples. How many apples remaining I have now? So then for them to do this sum, they should possess the prior knowledge of deduction and addition. Otherwise, they won't be able to do this sum. So as a teacher, when you are presenting new knowledge, you need to actually make sure that the internal conditions are met. They have the capabilities needed for the understanding of the new knowledge. That is internal conditions. But it is said, the research findings are so that they say teachers actually are very well prepared with the external conditions to be provided. But the teachers actually not paying attention to the internal conditions to be met. That the capabilities the child possesses to actually process the new information presented. That, of course, teacher doesn't think about. So what can you do as the teacher? So when you walk into the classroom to do a new lesson, suppose you're an English teacher. So you're today teaching them simple present tense, active voice, positive. So you know S form or the base form of the verb. So you are not going to teach them the forms of the verbs as base form, singular form, past tense, and all that on that particular day in that lesson. Instead, you have to think whether they have the capability of using the 2 forms of verbs, the base form and the S form. So how can you actually make sure that they actually know it? You can give them a kind of recalling, if not engagement activity, to recall their prior knowledge, existing knowledge, which is useful in understanding today's knowledge. Whether they have that capability, the already existing capabilities, which is relevant to the today's lesson, should be recalled through activities. That is actually internal conditions. Most of the teachers actually take this for granted. They just go on telling, explaining the new lesson without thinking whether they have the capability, the prior knowledge that is needed for the process of the new knowledge that you're going to present. That, of course, is not taken into consideration. So make sure as teachers, you actually provide both the conditions actually available for the learner. Is it clear or you have any questions? Clear or you have any questions?
Understood, madam.
Understood. No, thank you for responding. At least 1 or 2 are there. Others are silent killers. You didn't want to talk? No? Right, okay. Understood by 1 or I don't know. Then we'll go to the next. Then we have to talk about learning outcomes. Gagny also talks about learning outcomes. But you might know in technology, educational technology. We are going to discuss it, but you might already know because you are a product of SLEAT and colleges of education. Who comes to your mind when it comes to learning outcomes? Who comes to your mind when it comes to learning outcomes?
Students.
No, I'm asking the educationists or theorists coming to your mind when it comes to learning outcomes. Actually, students are correct. Students, at the end of the day, what the students will be able to do, that is learning outcomes. So definitely it's the students. But when you're actually writing learning outcomes for the lessons and all that, who comes to your mind? We all use his taxonomy to write learning outcomes.
Bloom's.
Yeah, definitely, yes.
Then,
Benjamin Bloom's comes to your mind. And the three domains. What are the three domains? Cognitive for head, knowledge related. Yeah, psychomotor for hand, skills related. And affective attitudes, heart related, the 3H. That is Bloom's taxonomy of learning outcomes. Don't get it mixed up with Gagne's learning outcomes, okay? In the Gagne's information processing theory of learning, Gagne also talks about learning outcomes. Though there are similarities, it is not exactly as exactly as Bloom's taxonomy as well. So don't get it mixed up, okay? So according to Gagne's learning outcomes, okay, the student should be able to develop, and the learner is developing his or her capabilities in 5 areas at the end of the lesson. At the end of each lesson, the learner is expected to develop in 5 areas. You can see the 5 areas here: intellectual skills, cognitive strategy, verbal information, attitude, and motor skills. So if you take attitudes, Bloom's also has that affective domain. Motor skills, that is psychomotor skills. They are common. Then the cognitive domain, Bloom's has 6 levels. Lot and hot කියලා. හැබැයි Gagne has 3, not levels actually, 3 areas for the cognitive domain. Okay? And the attitudes and the motor skills as well. So what are the 3 areas of cognitive domain by Gagne? What are the 3 areas of cognitive domain by Gagne? You can read it from the slide: intellectual skills, cognitive strategy, verbal information. Are you listening?
yes, madam.
Yeah. එතන බලමු what do they mean කියලා. We'll start with the easiest one. Verbal information from the cognitive domain. Verbal information. Knowing that something is, labels and facts also known as declarative knowledge. Verbal information කියලා කියන්නේ, if I ask you what are the 4 stages of cognitive development by Piaget, you can tell me. What is the capital city of Sri Lanka? You can tell me. Right? There is a doctor murdered in India very recently. What's the name? You can tell me. Right? They are all verbal information. Right? So at the end of the day, each lesson, the learner should be able to actually develop their verbal information. They know the subject matter and they can actually tell or write or do something with the subject matter. That is verbal information. Of course, it happens in each and every class. Okay. Then we can go to cognitive strategy. No, then we can go to intellectual skills. If you look at intellectual skills, how to do something, also known as procedural knowledge. discrimination, concrete concepts, rule using, and problem solving. I will tell you an example, then it will be clearer to you. Now, in the same example I gave you, I have 5 apples. I ate 2. I gave 1 to my sister. My father gave me another 5 apples. How many apples I'm having now, Kiwahama? The student should know. I have to add here. I have to deduct here, Kela. Right? That is intellectual skills. Now you teach them simple present tense. Right? They can tell simple present tense is used to talk about regular activities. It's verbal information. In simple present tense, we use the S form and the base form of the verb. It's verbal information. But intellectual skills is the students actually use simple present tense to talk about their daily activities. So they have to talk about daily activities. They select simple present tense to talk about daily activities. They have to talk about yesterday. They use simple past tense to talk about yesterday. That is their intellectual skill, right? Using rules to solve problems. Okay, that is it. That is also something somewhat happens in the classroom. Okay, we make sure that it happens. Then cognitive strategy. Cognitive strategy is hardly touched upon by the teachers adequately. But according to Gagné, it is very, very important that the teachers actually get the learner to develop their cognitive strategies as well. What is cognitive strategy? Process by which the learner controls own learning, remembering and thinking behavior. They are picking on metacognition කියලා. ඒ කියන්නේ the learner knows how to learn best. And you as the teacher should make sure the learner work it out. The learner works it out. I learn best this way. For example, now Mala is 5 feet, Sama is 5'2", and Rama is 5'8". Who is the shortest? Who is the tallest? Great poll are making voting. They can't actually mentally calculate it. They can't. So then the child knows, I can draw. Right, 5'2". Then 5'6" is taller. Right, it's drawn. 5'4" is shorter than 5'6", but taller than 5'2" and drawn. And now the child can see the illustration. The tallest is this person and the shortest is this person. That is cognitive strategy. The child knows what kind of strategies that she has to learn in order to, she has to use in order to learn. Now, for example, for me, right, I can actually one shot remember something if I read it aloud. So I worked it out on my own. So the teachers, of course, you have to actually ask them, do the summary and bring it to the class. Do a transfer of information activity of this unit and bring it to the class and present. Like that, right. Now, you all know in literature that we have to actually by heart lots of quotations. So I used a strategy, what works for me. I have to write it 10 times, each quotation. Then, of course, I will not forget that. So I worked it out. So you have to guide your students to actually work out the strategies that help them to learn better, think better, remember better. So in your education, in your teaching, you give them different activities. Go home and develop a mind map. Go home and write the summary. Go home and transfer information into a grid. Like that, you give them a lot of activities. And then they can actually work it out on their own, which works best for them in remembering and thinking and controlling their own learning. That is cognitive strategy. But verbal information and intellectual skills, of course, we get them to develop, but hardly we think in terms of getting the learner to develop their metacognition or cognitive strategy. So Gagny emphasizes on that as well. Is it clear or it's not clear?
Clear, ma'am.
Yeah,
madam.
yes, that is it. Now, actually, when I was actually working, reading for my degrees and all that, I worked out a very good metacognition plan for me. If I want to actually learn something quickly, keep it in mind and all that, the framework, I myself developed that. So I use that framework to study. Of course, I know that I will not remember, forget anything, and I can face the exams very well. Likewise, my own work framework or strategies will not work with you. So, the 4 pillars of education by UNICEF. Sorry. The 4 pillars of education. Learn to learn, learn to do. එහෙම කියලා තියෙනවා. Now, learn to learn කියලා කියන්නේ what you learn today, as it is, you can't actually make use of it. You should develop your cognitive strategies. Then only that you can actually develop your ability to learn to learn. Then only you're getting your learner to become learn to learn. That one fine day, they actually use these cognitive strategies and they themselves engage in self-learning. හැබැයි ඒක hardly touched on by teachers. Yes or no? Am I right or wrong? තේරෙනවද නැද්ද? තේරෙයිමා or not? තේරු නැත්තක් කියන්න ළමයි. Okay ද?
Clear, madam.
Okay. Then we go to the next 2, attitudes and motor skills. Attitudes is affective domain. That is internal state which affects the individual's choice of action towards some object, person, or event. So you all know attitude should be developed through each and every lesson, irrespective of the subject that you teach. It may be dancing, it may be art, it may be cookery, it may be English, it may be science, it may be maths, whatever. You need to get them to develop their attitudes as well. I give you an example. Now, you're an English language teacher. You want to get them to develop their reading skills, some skills of scanning and skimming. So you give them a passage to read. The passage is about sustainable living. So they actually read it to develop their reading skills of scanning and skimming. But at the same time, they will develop their attitudes about sustainable living and they will come to know what sustainable living is and why it's important. Now, it's a grade 6 class. You want them to read and comprehend. So you give them a reading passage and it is about trees. So they develop the ability to read and comprehend. That was the purpose in the language class. But you get them to develop their attitudes. We should not fell trees. We should look after them. We should actually be grateful to trees because they give us life. That kind of attitude that they should develop, right? So with each and every lesson that you do, irrespective of the subject matter, they should develop their attitudes as well. And you have to take conscious efforts. And when you're, according to Bloom's taxonomy, when you're writing the lesson objectives also, you write 1 or 2 effective domain ones as well, right? Value the importance of preserving nature, like that. Motor skills is actually related to the bodily movements, including muscular activities, and our ability to use actually tools and equipment. So that also is very important. Sometimes, we produce engineers. They actually know the theory, but they don't know actually practically how to work with the tools and the equipment and all that. Sometimes it's the mechanic who knows it, because our education system is such. But it's very important, along with the knowledge and attitudes, you get them to develop their motor skills as well, Keneka. The ability to use their body and muscles and equipment and tools, that also should be developed. So this cognitive domain of Gagny and cognitive domain of Bloom's, it slightly differ. They slightly differ. Bloom's having 6 levels, and Gagny doesn't talk about 6 levels, but 3 areas of cognitive domain as verbal information, cognitive strategy, and intellectual skills. And along with that, the attitude and affective domain, skills or psychomotor domain also should be developed. They are the Gagny's learned capabilities, that is learning outcomes, the second component of Gagny's information processing theory of learning. So we discussed 2 components. Gagny's information processing theory of learning. One is the conditions, internal and external conditions. Second is the learning outcomes, the 5 areas in the 3 domains. Okay. Now we are looking at 9 events of instructions. Here. 9 events of instruction. Can you see what I'm showing?
Yes, madam.
Yeah. If you take 9 events of instruction, Gagny, Gagny is from cognitive school of thought. So Gagny's information learning theory is a cognitive learning theory. It's a complex learning theory, that is, learning is a matter of our internal mental capacities, our cognition. So what we discuss in cognition, right, they are actually to be used in the classroom teaching as well. Now we know we receive a lot of sensations from the 5 sensory organs, but we can't pay equal attention. We pay selective attention. And when the information is presented, if you don't get the learner to pay attention, what will happen? They are lost from the sensory memory itself without passing it on to the short term and the long term. Then there's no learning happens. Because of that, Gagny says one event that should take place in the classroom is get the learner to pay attention, gain attention of the learner, present the learner with an introductory activity that engages the learner and get their attention to the lesson. Because if attention is not paid, nothing is perceived and committed to the memory. We learn in the cognitive process. Now here it's learning is a matter of our cognition. So gaining attention is one of the most important events that should take place in the classroom learning and teaching, according to Gagny. Why should we gain attention? Because if we do not get them to pay attention, it is not actually perceived and sent to the memory. It is lost and forgotten in the sensory memory itself. මතකයි නේද ඒ කැලේ ටික කතා කරා? Yes or no? Let me ask you something now. Right. Then we have to actually inform the learner of objectives of the lesson. Inform the learner of objectives of the lesson. Objectives කියලා කියන්නේ what the learner should be able to do at the end of the lesson. Label the names, parts of a tree. State 6 functions of different parts of the trees. Name 5 domestic animals, right? Use S form and base form of the verb appropriately in simple present tense. Likewise, at the end of the lesson, what the students will be able to do is the objective. So according to Gagné, the learner should be informed about the learning outcomes, what they should be able to do at the end of the lesson. So you might think your students might not understand, no? But even if it is a grade 1 class, you can tell them, today I want you to actually name. I want you to be able to name 5 domestic animals. 5 domestic animals. How many? 5. How? What domestic animals? Then students know this is what I'm supposed to actually learn. Then they will not actually pay attention to, can you remember figure ground? I showed you a picture, the 2 faces of the vase. Some saw the vase, some saw the 2 faces. But the figure is the vase, the 2 faces, that is the ground. Always when we present our lessons, our students actually is given some other information for the better understanding. It's presented in the context. So the context is the ground. But students might pay attention to the ground, not to the figure. To avoid that, you can tell the students in simple words, this is what I want you to be able to do at the end of the lesson. So students have a focus. Because of that, they know what they are supposed to learn. And that helps them to actually focus on the figure, not on the ground. As I told you that day, normally I give you an example, simple present tense, Uganana. Uganana quoted to tell them S form, the base form is to be used. You use a popular actress or actor or a sportsman's daily routine. How the family of this man spends the vacation or the weekends. So you use the context. They pay attention to the man's family and how they spend the weekend, not the S form and the base form. They don't focus on the figure but the ground. But you have to actually tell them at the outset itself, this is what I want you to learn. Then this is the figure of the lesson. This is the important part of the lesson. Then they will actually pay attention to that without deviating from it. Right? That is informed learners of the objective. So that is what Gagné focuses on, because he is a cognitive learning theorist, and we discuss it in cognition. Okay? Right. අනේ මං කියනවා තේරෙනවද විතරක් කියලා කියන ළමයි ඕම શબ્ද නුග්‍රේට I don't know.
Understood, madam.
Yeah, okay. Only one person responds, at least another one.
Understood, ma'am.
Okay, thank you. Then I go to the next one. Stimulate recall of prior learning. Stimulate recall of prior learning. Present the learner with an experience that stimulates their prior knowledge. As I told you, this concept comes with internal learning conditions. Internal conditions of learning. Just a while ago, I discussed conditions of learning by Gagné. Internal conditions, already existing capabilities of the learner, which is helpful in the comprehension of the today's understanding. So stimulate the recall of that relevant, already existing capabilities and the knowledge of the learner through a kind of an activity or a pre-activity or whatever. That is also very important for the provision of internal conditions needed for learning. Got it? Now, for example, you all are teaching them today how to look after pets. How to look after pets. But you have already discussed with them kind of pets we have at home in the grade 1 class. So they say, we have cats, we have dogs, we have parrots and all that. You're going to actually now talk about how to look after them properly. So you can just recall their knowledge about who are our domestic animals we are at home. So you can just ask a few questions from them. Who are the pets you have at home? You have a parrot, you have a cat, you have 2 dogs, right? Okay. Now you recall their prior knowledge, connected it with the new lesson. Right? Stimulate recall of prior knowledge. That is internal conditions needed for learning. That also is a must according to Gagné's learning theory. You have to recall the prior existing knowledge that they have for the better understanding of today's new knowledge. Then you have to present the stimulus. Present the stimulus is the new learning, the materials for new learning, activities for new learning. Teacher can explain. If not, the students can actually read it and learn. You actually give them an activity to read and learn. That is present the today's new knowledge. Then they provide the learner with guidance. That is providing examples and simplifying and all that. And then elicit performance and assess them. Elicit performance like giving them an activity, you see whether they have learned it, whether they are doing proper and all that. And then if they're wrong, you give them, provide, are you doing good? Yes, this is the answer. No, this has to be how you're going to correct and all that. And assess their performance finally. And give them further activities to enhance retention and transfer. That is to commit it to the long-term memory. You have to give them a lot of practice activities. So not to forget, they have to practice it a lot. We have discussed it in cognition. So he says the ninth event is you have to give them practice activities to enhance retention and transfer to the long-term memory. So this is actually based on the cognitive process we learn. Gagny talks about the 9 events that you should make sure happens in your teaching to facilitate learning. Got it, or you didn't get that?
Got it, ma'am.
Yeah. So that is the end of learning, the unit learning. Okay. That's the end of the unit learning. We discuss Gagny's learning theory under complex learning. That is cognitive learning theories. Okay. We can move to the new topic, motivation. Before we move to the next topic, motivation, I will show you something. I want a 5-minute break because I have a kind of a visitor. I want to say hi and come back because after 10 years I'm seeing. Can you give me 2-3 minutes? Okay, don't leave the meeting. Is it okay?
Okay, madam.
Right.
Okay,
Give
ma'am.
me 2-3 minutes enough. Okay, right. Okay. Sorry. Hello. I'm not taking that 5-minute break because, hello, are you there?
Yes, madam.
I actually need some more time because I thought they are leaving, but they are not leaving right now. I have time, right? Okay. Okay, I can continue for some more time before I take 5-minute break to say bye to them. Okay. And now here I'm going to show you. Give me a processing theory in. Okay. Right. Let's see this research paper. I'm actually sharing it with you now. Now here, there is an abstract that you can see. effectiveness of implementation of Gagne's learning theory with combination problem solving approach to ability to think, critical student. Their English is very poor. I don't know why this is actually published in a paper like this, but you can see. So educators, they actually use these models and do their teaching and then see whether it's effective or not. So suppose you are an English language teacher. So you can actually do an intervention. You can uh, teach English for 3 months using Gagne's information processing theory, applying the 9 events in each and every lesson. And then you can see whether your students learn better, right? So you can have observations, you can have tests and see whether all the students are learning better because of this new model applied. Likewise, this is how that you are using them in the classroom. Now, if you are not in the habit of informing the learner about the learning outcomes, hereafter you can do that, right? I want you to learn this and that here. So your students can focus easily because they know what they're supposed to learn. They can't give equal attention and they will pay attention to the ground, not to the figure, because if they do not know what they're supposed to learn. Likewise, you can use now recalling prior knowledge, existing knowledge relevant to the today's new understanding. If you are not in the habit of doing that, you can add that part to your teaching and see whether your students benefit from it, how your teaching becomes more effective and all that. Okay. So a lot of things can be done if you actually take interest in applying what you learn in psychology in the classroom. Okay, give me a second, Puta. Sorry about it. Okay. Hello.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, okay. Now we are done with the learning theories. Now we move on to our new topic. The new topic is motivation. Okay. The new topic is motivation. So if I ask you what motivation is, how will you actually explain it to me? What is motivation? If I ask you what is motivation? What is motivation?
It is a kind of encouraging.
So some form of encouragement. Okay. Most of the time, my students talk about encouragement as motivation. Okay. Then others, what is motivation for you? What is motivation for you? Just talk me, otherwise it's boring, no? කෙනෙක් විතර කතා කරනවා අනිත් අය නිකන් ඉන්නවනේ වැඩක් නෑනේ නේද? Motivation, can you talk to me about what is it? What is motivation?
Pushing a person to upwards while he is down, ma'am.
That is also good. Kind of encouragement once again, no? Pushing somebody up, right? By giving them some words, using some kind of persuasion and all that. Okay, right. Good. So that is motivation for you. But we will have a kind of look at what motivation is. Have I shared my new PowerPoint slides on motivation? Yes?
Yes,
Yes,
ma'am.
madam.
Yeah. So teach, inspire, and motivate. As you said, encourage, right? Teach, inspire, and motivate. Encourage them to learn. So why motivation is very important to teachers, right? I will tell you why. According to the existing literature, education is a failure due to lack of motivation. Education is a failure due to lack of motivation. Maybe the students are not motivated to learn. If you ask 100 teachers, how are your students? Are they actually learning? No, man, they are not motivated to learn. They are not interested in learning. I don't know. That is what the teachers say. That means the students lack motivation. And even the teachers, sometimes they lack motivation to do their best because they are not paid well. They are put to work very hard with less facilities and all that නේද ඔෆිස් වල ගියාය AC කාමරවල ඉඳගෙන උගන් මේ වැඩ කරනකොට ඕලන් අවුව ඉඳගෙන ග්‍රවුන්ඩ් එකට ගිහිල්ලා කැපැක්ට් ක්ලාස්රූම්ස් වල chalk and talk අලුත් modern equipment නෑ එහෙම තමයි උගන්වන්නේ. ඒ වගේ lack of motivation is a big problem in education, right? But according to literature, if the teacher can motivate the learner to learn, if the teacher is equipped with motivational strategies to be implemented in the learning process, 40% of learning is already done even before you get started with teaching. That is what literature says. It's highly motivating, isn't that so? So as a teacher, how much that your students learn actually depends on their motivation. So if the teacher knows how to motivate the learner, how they can be motivated, you can actually be successful in your teaching and the students will learn more and better. That is it. So learning and motivation, you can't separate the two. They go hand in hand, right? How much you are motivated, learning is actually more and more. So you want your students to learn. එතකොට එහෙනම් ඔයා හිතන්නේ I want to teach. I want to teach the subject matter. But teaching the subject matter alone will not work කියන එක තමයි මෙතන ඉඳන් අඳුර ගන්න ඕනේ. එහෙනම් මොනවද? Get them to be motivated to learn. See them whether they are motivated to learn. Then of course they will learn more and better and very effectively that they engage in the learning and teaching process. So you can't forget the fact that you have to motivate your learners, right? So because of that, this is another topic that we have in the course descriptor, motivation. So you know how important it is for you to actually motivate the learner to learn. Otherwise, you may be doing 200% of teaching. They will not learn it because they're not motivated. That is what, okay? So as you actually prepare for your lessons with the materials and activities and everything, you need to actually think of how to motivate them to learn as well, okay? That is it. And with that, we'll come to that. What is motivation? According to psychology, motivation is a form of need fulfillment. Motivation is a desire to, a feeling of wanting, feeling of desiring, right? You are motivated means you want to do something. You want something to happen. You desire it to happen or something like that is motivation, right? A need is there and you want to fulfill it. You want that, right? You want to become a professionally qualified teacher. You want to be a degree holder. That kind of a wanting is there in you. That kind of a desire is there in you. That is motivation. So in your learners also, I want to learn English. I want to speak in English. I want to actually do well in my mathematics and get an A because I want to do engineering for my higher studies. That kind of a wanting the learner has is the first step. Is the first step towards motivation. Is the first step towards motivation. A feeling of wanting and desire. It's the first step of motivation. Why do I say it's the first step of motivation? Now, if the feeling of wanting and desire is the motivation, everyone is highly motivated. Why? We have lots of wantings and desires. Am I right?
Yes,
Am I right? Yeah, but then of course we don't have a problem with motivation because we are full of needs. We are full of feelings of wanting and desires. That is there. But that is only the first step of motivation. You have to transform that feeling of wanting, the feeling of need fulfillment to a motivation. How can you transform it to a motivation? There are three keywords: consistency, goals, and direction. What are the three words? Consistency, goals, and direction. Now you have a feeling of wanting. You want to be a graduate and then to engage in postgraduate studies and to become a doctor and a professor. That is the feeling of wanting you have. But just because that you have the feeling of wanting, that you will not become a professor or a doctor. That feeling of wanting should be consistent in you. Something is wrong now. The feeling of wanting or desire it's echoing now. Can you mute your mics, please, for a while? Can you all mute your mics for a while, dear? Then sometimes it's now okay, right? Okay, now. Then just because that you all have that wanting in you, it will not be a motivation if you do not have this desire or feeling of wanting consistently. The persistent desire වෙන්න ඕනේ. ඒ කියන්නේ time to time ඇති වෙනවා නැති වෙනවා හරියන්නේ නැහැ. Right? එහෙම ඒවා කොච්චර අපිට තියෙනවද? We have wantings, desires like that. We have that, but we don't actually have it consistently or persistently in us. I will give you one example. Now, I was living in Colombo, now moved to Kalutara temporarily because of my daughter's confinement. But when I was in actually Colombo, I wanted to, it's an apartment. So I don't have a garden or something, but I like flowers and all that. Because of that, every time I go to Diyatalava, I buy expensive pots. And my people are shouting at me, don't, you're wasting money because you're not looking after. As I'm busy and all that, I actually water the plants and everything for 2 weeks. And then I actually don't tend to them. And then they wither, they die. Next time also when I go there, I'm actually tempted. I buy 1 or 2, 3 pots, and then same thing happens. So I have the wanting, I have the desire to have some pots in the passage, but that desire is not consistent in me. Because of that, it's not a motivation, right? That is why I couldn't have a passage full of flower pots there. Okay, so same thing here. You have the first step towards a motivation is the feeling of wanting. But if you want to transform it to a motivation, you need to make it persistent or consistent in the learner. Right, okay. And then what is the next one? It should give you goals. It should give you goals. It should be goal oriented. So the feeling of wanting that you have has given you goals, has given you goals, has given you goals. I want to become a graduate, then I want to do my master's, I want to do my MPhil, I want to do my PhD and become a doctor, and then I will one fine day become a professor. Goal then only that feeling of wanting is transformed into a motivation. It's goal oriented. And then it gives you directions. Directions. Now, as you have that feeling of wanting to become a PhD one fine day or a professor one fine day, so you look for places where you can actually do your first degree. And then after the first degree, what are the openings or what are the possibilities and all that. And then you are actually directed towards doing something. And now you're reading your first degree with the aim of actually achieving that goal. It is persistent. That is why you're not dropping out. And your feeling of wanting is a motivation. But there can be students, those who got enrolled, but due to other commitments, challenges, difficulties, they gave up. So no persistency, no goal direction, goals or directions achieved. Am I right? So because of that, when it comes to your learners also, if you really want to motivate them, so you have to make that need fulfillment. You want to learn mathematics, you want to learn English, you have to make it persistent and consistent. You have to give them goals, you have to give them directions, right? Then you can actually do well in maths. And time to time that you have to actually tell them, you have to stay motivated, not tell only, do things, activities to get them to stay motivated, and give them directions. You do like this and that, and show them the goals that can be achieved at the end of the day. Then you can actually get them to be motivated. So in simple terms, motivation begins with a feeling of wanting, but it is transformed into a motivation if the feeling of wanting is persistent and goal-oriented and gives you directions. With that, we'll go to some definitions of motivation. I will get one of you to read the 3 definitions here, and you can see what I discuss is here in all the 3 definitions. Who will read? Who will read?
Can I, ma'am?
Yes, please. Go ahead.
Definitions of motivation. It is an internal process arising from a felt need operates through sustained actions towards fulfilling the need loyal.
Yeah, read the rest also.
Motivation indicates the direction of individual behavior, persistence of such behavior, and the goal of such behavior. Weiner. Motivation is an internal state or condition, sometimes described as a need, desire, or want that serves to activate or energize behavior and give it direction, Kleinginna and Kleinginna.
Yeah, they are the actually theorists. Okay, now all the three, you can see what I told you, right? Fulfillment of a need, desire or wanting, a feeling of desire or wanting, and that is the beginning of motivation. But that feeling of wanting is transformed to a motivation if they are persistent in them, if they have given them goals and directions. Right. You can take yourself as the best example. You have the wanting or the desire to become a qualified person, and then it is consistent in you. Because of that, you are not giving up, you're pursuing, and then it has given you goals, right? First, the first degree, and then the rest of it. And it has given you direction. So you have got into Apex campus to do your first degree, the affiliated one, a recognized one. So that is how the needs are transformed into motivations, and it applies to your own students as well. If you think of motivating them, make sure that you actually have to give them they have the desire of feeling of desire of wanting. They want to learn maths. They want to do well in English and all that, and make it consistent and persistent by giving them more kind interesting activities and talking to them about the usefulness of learning these and all that, and give them goals and show them the directions. Like, you can read, and you can actually join the English club, and you can actually take up Olympiad mathematics exams. Like that, you can actually give them directions as well. Okay, that is it. So now we are going to talk about the next topic, that is types of motivation. Types of motivation. If you take motivation, there are different classifications. Let's talk about different types of motivation. I'm talking about two main types of motivation. If you take types of motivation, your learners get motivated in two different ways, right? Your learners can be motivated in two different ways. They are the type of motivation. The two types are intrinsic motivation and extrinsic motivation. Intrinsic motivation and extrinsic motivation. If you take extrinsic motivation, the learner is motivated due to outside factors. Learner is motivated due to outside factors. What are the outside factors? Not within the learner, but because of the external factors. The learner is motivated. Now, for example, if I complete my degree, I'm entitled for a pay hike. That is why I'm pursuing my degree. It is extrinsic motivation. You are motivated to pursue this, read for this degree, because of the external factors that you're motivated. I will be actually have the recognition. Everybody knows then I'm a graduate teacher, so it will give me recognition. External factors, so extrinsic motivation. And then, I can actually go abroad and find a better job. External factor. Similarly, your learners also get motivated due to extrinsic motivation, that is external factors, maybe certificates, maybe praise, maybe recognition, maybe a sense like that, due to all external factors. That of more or less we all are motivated due to mostly due to external factors. නේද? සමහර වෙලාවට even though this is difficult, you have to actually come online and listen to the lecturers and then do assignments, and it's difficult for you, but still you're doing it because you are entitled for a pay hike. Then you can become a graduate teacher, so it's recognition and all that. So they are all external factors. So because of that, it's extrinsic motivation, and most of our motivation is due to external factors. If not, we are extrinsically motivated. But if you take intrinsic motivation, we are motivated to do something due to the happiness and inner need in us for our own happiness and satisfaction. We are motivated to do something. For example, you like playing the guitar. You like playing the guitar. And you know, you're not an expert, so you're not going to make money out of it. But playing the guitar every day before going to bed makes you happy. So you're spending half an hour, 1 hour playing the guitar, not for any external rewards. It's only for your own internal happiness. That is intrinsic motivation. So your learners can be intrinsically motivated as well to engage in learning. But basically, they are young learners. So the young learners should be extrinsically motivated to learn. They actually engage in learning due to external factors like please the parents, get awards and certificates, and get good grades and marks and all that. So the teachers have to actually use a lot of extrinsic motivation strategies like giving them red stars, giving them praise, giving them certificates and all that. It happened. Now, I will give an example. Now, a child likes to do lots of play activities or draw art, paintings and all that. It's an intrinsic motivation in the child because the child enjoys the act of drawing. But the mother or father might say, don't waste money, right? Sorry, don't waste time. Your exams are close by, right? You have to get 8 A's, 9 A's, 10 A's. By drawing these kind of paintings, you're not going to get anything. Stop wasting time on this. Then the learner's intrinsic motivation is not allowed, not promoted, not entertained by the parents. That is the very nature of materialistic world. We live in a materialistic world now, right? Education and everything is materialistic. Life is materialistic. So we actually think if we do something for our own satisfaction without much gains out of it, it is a waste of money, it's a waste of time, it's a waste of your life. You're not going to get anything out of it. But satisfaction you get. I will tell you, when I was young, a long time back, I'm an old woman now, right? I'm an elderly person now, not old, the elderly person. But when I was very young, when I was schooling, I was in the habit of reading novels. I enjoyed it a lot. My mother was all the time scolding me, scolding me, scolding me. You're wasting your time. You're not studying. You're reading novels. And I used to get my uncle to bring me books, right? One of my uncles. And my mother stopped my uncle bringing me books. Those days, it's not easy to get a book to read, right? And he used to actually bring books to me from the British Council and all that. And my mother actually stopped him bringing me books also. Why? I'm not going to pass exams because of the time I spent on reading novels. But it gave me immense happiness. That is intrinsic motivation. In a materialistic world, people are not much intrinsically motivated. They are always extrinsically motivated. You get my point or you don't get my point?
We got your point, ma'am.
Right. So striking a balance is a must. Why? Now you can't help it. As teachers, you need to actually get the learners be motivated. So definitely it's extrinsic motivation. You introduce red stars, you introduce certificates, you introduce praise charts and all that, then the learners will be extrinsically motivated. It happens. You can't say no to it. But have you ever read this drama, The Proposal by Anton Chekhov? It's a very popular one. It's translated to Sinhala also Parastava Kela. Have you ever read that? Anton Chekhov's The Proposal. No. Anyone of you? Nobody has read. Okay, I tell you in one or two sentences, this is what happened. Right? Natalia and Lenore. These
No,
two, huh? You said something. Right. And these two actually are middle-aged. Now they are passing their marriageable age. And they two are about to get married, and it's a kind of, they're getting married. So why they are getting married? Status, money, wealth, property, and they need each other to do their work, right? Look after each other in their old age. They are the reasons for the marriage. Marriage of convenience, all extrinsic motivations. They don't talk about the very essence of marriage, that is love. They are not getting married just because they are not getting married because of they fall in love with each other. The very word love is absent in the drama. Okay, it's actually a humorous play. Very you can laugh at what's happening there. So they are talking about symbol of status, wealth. They are going to be actually now from wealthier than now, and all these things are there. Lacking is love. So they are not getting married for intrinsic motivation or satisfaction or that inner feeling, but they are actually getting married for the external rewards, that both the parties are benefited because of this marriage. They will get wealthier, status is there, and they have somebody to actually do their work for them and all these things. And for the father, it's actually a big responsibility of the shoulders. තාත්තත් හිතන්නේ දුව බැන්දුවට පස්සේ දැන් මගේ වගකීම ඉවර වෙනවානේ. Whether they are in love කියන එක nobody thinks of. So that is the outcome of being actually always extrinsically motivated. It is dangerous. So because of that, you have to actually motivate your students, and they should be extrinsically motivated first. Because of that, they say it's a double-edged sword. Double-edged sword. දෙපැත්ත කැපෙන පීයක් වගේ. You have to handle it with care කියලා. So always make sure that you need to introduce red stars, certificates, praise, and all that external factors. They are actually make them motivated. But later on, you have to actually transform the extrinsic motivation into an intrinsic motivation as well. Otherwise, from the early days itself, even the education system contributes to it, right? You are actually getting them to be extrinsically motivated to do something. Even the marriage is extrinsically motivated. Nothing is done for intrinsic motivation. So it's the society we see now. It's very dangerous. You're not happy, you're not satisfied, you're stressed, you're very selfish. You're not actually committed to anybody. So very education system also contributes. Why? ඉස්කෝල වලත් කරන්නේ මොනවද? certificate දෙනවා, rewards දෙනවා, අවුදම් මනනවා, banners ගානවා. Extrinsic motivation, because you can't help it, otherwise you can't. But they say get them towards the intrinsic motivation as well. Kela, is the message clear to you?
Yes, madam.
I will actually talk more about it, because though not for exam purpose, I want you to have the correct attitude towards this as a teacher. Now there's a nice study, it's called ribbon study කියලා. හරි? A ribbon study එකකින් කරලා තිනවා this extrinsic motivation එක how dangerous it is to කියලා බලන්න. So they took it's an experimental study. They took an art class, right? They are drawing paintings and all that, are young learners. Then all are of same level, they have same levels assumed. And this art class was put into two groups, experimental group and the control group. So half of the class is in the experimental group, the other half in the control group. So for the control group, they were given nothing. They actually engage in classroom activities, drawing, paintings, and all that as usual way. For the experimental group, for 3 months, they introduced a ribbon system. For each drawing, each painting that they do, they are entitled for a ribbon. Okay, a form of a ribbon. So they can collect the ribbons. The control group, they were ignorant about the ribbons or whatever, as in a normal classroom that they actually did their paintings. Okay. Now, after 3 months, they studied the paintings of both the groups, experimental group and the control group. What can be seen there? Can you actually assume it? What might have happened? What's the finding otherwise? Can you tell me? Nika hitala kiya? What can be the finding? Hmm? Lamai? Are you there? Are you listening?
Yes, ma'am.
ඉතින් මොනවා වෙලා ඇද්ද කියලා හිතන්නකෝ කියන්නකෝ නිකන් බොරුවක් හරි කියන්න හරි. If I were you, I could at least tell something which is actually absurd. Tell. මොනවා වෙලා තියෙන්නේ නැද්ද drawings වලට? What is the outcome or what can be seen after 3 months of it? Hmm? අයියෝ ළමයි. මොකක් වෙන්න ඇද්ද? අයියෝ මොකක්වත් කියන්න බැරිද? එතකොට ඔයාලට කවුරු හරි රිබන් එකක් වගේ මොනවා හරි තෑග්ගක් දෙනවා නම් හැම චිත්‍රයකටම මොකක්ද ඔයගොල්ලෝ කරන්නේ? වැඩිපුර අඳිනවද නැද්ද?
Yes, madam.
Now what has happened? The experimental group, those who were introduced to the ribbon system, the number of paintings increased. That means quantity increased. But the control group, they didn't know about any ribbons. So they were not given any rewards. So they actually engaged in usual work. Because of that, they produced only less numbers, less quantity. But when you look at the quality, the fine-tuning, experimentation, creativity, everything was there in the control group. They have taken a lot of time and they have actually been obsessed with it. So they were actually fine-tuning, using creativity, spending a lot of time in finishing one painting. But as the experimental group knew that they can get a ribbon, it's just haphazard, very quick work, no lack of creativity, lack of fine-tuning was seen, though there were big numbers of paintings in the group. That is the danger of it. So it is, the motivation is something that you should, as teachers, that you should handle it with care. It's a double-edged sword. If you actually overuse extrinsic motivation, just because that if you have to motivate them, then only that you can get them to learn. Kiela. That will be the outcome. No quality but quantity. Right? They will do everything for a reward only. They will lose their quality. That danger is there in this materialistic world. So how can you actually, as teachers, you can't say no to extrinsic motivation. You have to actually introduce rewards, but make sure. Now, suppose you tell them, right, I want you to engage in drama, music, singing, because it helps you to develop your skills. So if you actually come to the drama club, you are entitled for a certificate. If you come, you can win drama competitions, and then you are recognized. Though all are extrinsic, okay? And then you are into music, right? Okay, you learn to play the guitar and you can perform in the concert, and everyone will come to know that you're very talented. So they're all extrinsic. But at the end of the day, as a teacher, it's not very kind of good to make people to do something only for a reward. So you can actually ask them for the project, right? You all have to get together, drama people, art people, and get together and plan a day out in an elder's home and get them to actually, you entertain them, spend the whole day there. So then they are making use of, they're practicing, they are going to for the elders' day, spending the day there. So they are actually practicing and working for it. That is not for recognition or anything, but for their satisfaction. At the end of the day, you get them to reflect on that. When you saw them actually be happy and smiling and all that, how did you feel? So then they learn to do something not only for a reward, but for the satisfaction and happiness that they can get as well. So it's up to the teacher to make sure that you are using extrinsic motivation because you can't help it, but at the same time, getting them to be extrinsically motivated also is your actually responsibility. Otherwise, we will end up with a very selfish society where nothing is done when there is no reward entitled. That is it. Now, of course, I know the marriage is actually a marriage of convenience. Each and everyone. හිතන්නේම මොනවද dowry තියනවද good job තියනවද status තියනවද ඕවා බලලා තමයි ඒක ඔක්කොම කරන්නේ. That is how it happens. But those days it was not like this, neither. It's actually based on love, but now it's not seen in our society anymore. The rest is also like that, okay? So because of that motivation, that you have to motivate your students, but make sure that motivation is not always extrinsic. Intrinsically also they should be motivated, and teachers should have a plan for that. That is the message given to you. Though it's a small part of the examination, what are the two types of motivation? Can you provide classroom examples? කියලා කිව්වොත් හරි චූටි කෑල්ලක්. හැබැයි I spend a lot of time talking about it because it should bring an attitudinal change in you, right? Okay. So we come to a theories of motivation. There are several theories that discuss motivation, but we have no time to do all these. But very common theory. Everyone who has some knowledge of psychology should know this theory. We are going to discuss that theory. Maslow's hierarchy of needs theory. Maslow's hierarchy of needs theory. Abraham Maslow, right? Abraham Maslow proposed a theory, hierarchy of needs, because needs only transformed into motivations, as we discussed in the definition. So according to Abraham Maslow, the hierarchy of needs theory, this is how individuals are motivated. And you can see this is how your students also motivated to learn, right? So how they can be motivated to learn, you can actually see through this hierarchy of needs theory by Abraham Maslow. So according to Abraham Maslow, we individuals are motivated in need fulfillment. We individuals are motivated in need fulfillment. So we have, according to Abraham Maslow, we have 5 levels of needs. We have 5 levels of needs. They can be put into a hierarchical order. When you put these needs into an hierarchical order in a pyramid-like thing, okay, hierarchical order, as you see this on this slide, the most important needs are at the bottom. The second most important need, the third most important need, the fourth most important need, and the fifth type. Right? Okay. And what is more important about is not the levels of need fulfillment, but if the most important needs of the individual, which are placed at the bottom of the hierarchy, are not fulfilled, they are not motivated to fulfill the second most important needs. If the second most important needs are not fulfilled, they are not motivated to fulfill the third most important need. If the third most important need is not fulfilled, they are not motivated for the fourth most important need of the individuals, like that. Now in blue color, light blue, you can see esteem needs. Esteem needs prestige and feeling of accomplishment. That is your learners to do well in studies, get certificates, pass exams, and all that comes as the fourth important need, the esteem needs. Below the esteem needs, there are three other most important needs to be fulfilled. If these below levels are not fulfilled, your learners are not motivated to fulfill these esteem needs in them. That is to learn, to get certificates, to pass exams, and to be recognized for the achievements and all. That will not be, they are not motivated for that. If their bottom layers, the most important ones below, are not motivated. That is what he talks about. The first is the most important is the physiological needs. Physiological needs are they want food, water, warmth, rest, shelter, clothing, leisure, sleep. They are the physiological needs of the learner. They are the most important needs that they have. If they actually don't get these needs fulfilled, they are not motivated for the second most important need to be fulfilled, that is safety needs. Safety needs can a sense of security and safety. Sense of security and safety. Financial safety. If your job is not permanent, you are not financially safe. In a country like ours, there is no political safety. We do not know any time we can go bankrupt. And the cost of living is high. We do not know whether we are secure financially, right? And in the school, if your students are bullied, if you are a very authoritative, threatening teacher, your students don't feel a sense of security, right? If you allow the big ones to come and bully the young ones, or the rich ones to bully the poor in your class, then these students, they don't have a sense of safety. If you always shout at them for not doing homework, for fighting and all that, they don't feel safe in your classroom. So that is the second most important need in them, right? And if it is fulfilled only, if the parents fight at home, they don't feel that they are safe, okay, physically and mentally and psychologically. So if that need is fulfilled only, they will be motivated to fulfill the third important need, that is love and belongingness, intimate relationships, friendships. I belong here. This is my classroom. They are my friends. This is my teacher. This is my school. This kind of feeling, sense of belongingness. If you play the role of the second mother in the school, you may be a man, you may be a woman, but it doesn't matter. You are the second mother to them in school. So you love them all equally, no favorizations. Then they feel that they belong to your class, they belong to this school and all that. If you promote friendship among each other, that of course the third important need is fulfilled. Now, if you take now safety needs and love and belongingness needs, I can give you very good example. Now, you know, sometimes back in our country, we had a 3-decade war, right? People were actually affected irrespective of their race, irrespective of their religion. They were affected, every one of them. Tamils, Muslims, Sinhalese, everyone was affected. So how did the terrorists get? Very young people, they were actually made to think, they were made to become suicide bombers. නේද? ලස්සන ගෑනු ළමයි, පිරිමි ළමයි, they became suicide bombers. How did they brainwash these young people? Because they all have their aspirations to fall in love, to have intimate relationships, and to do their studies, the fourth important need, and to well qualified and do a job. මුකුත් නැතිව, they actually became suicide bombers. How did they brainwash to become suicide bombers? They told them, in a country like this, we are not safe. In a country like this, we are the minority. We are safe. We don't belong here. This is not our country. කියලා brainwash කරා. එතකොට කරනකොට මොකද වෙන්නේ? They don't want to study and become somebody, and then all that is not relevant. And even sense of love, I want to fall in love and have a family and intimate relationship, no, because their safety needs are not fulfilled. Similarly, with the Sinhala people, you know, politicians, they told the people, we are not safe now because they are fighting for a separate land. And then we have to actually be very careful. You have to vote us. Otherwise, our country will be divided. We don't have a sense of security now anymore if we don't vote for them. They will safeguard the country. This is how people are brainwashed, right? Then they don't look for love and belongingness, esteem needs. It becomes irrelevant because the safety needs are not fulfilled. Okay, so in the class also, it's like if you allow other students to bully another innocent one or somebody, if that child is bullied, that child will not be motivated to make friends and to do well in studies, because esteem needs are irrelevant now because safety needs are not. If the child has a broken family or a mother and father fighting all the time, that child will not be motivated to actually make friends in school and to do studies well and to go for achievements and all that. I can remember long time back, I started my career as a teacher. The first class I got, there was a girl. I don't want to mention the name. Now she's doing very well. She's a nurse in UK. But she was actually doing very well in studies. And then again, I met after some time. I met her, I taught her in a secondary class. Then I saw she's not doing any studies well. She's very poor in her work. She's not interested in the work and all that. I became actually interested. I wanted to know why this has happened. So I wanted to actually help her out. Then I learned mother has gone abroad to earn money and then leaving this child with the father and the grandmother. And the father is a drunkard. And father actually physically abused the child by hitting the child all the time and getting the child to do the housework. And the child has no interest in anything else anymore because the second level most important need is not fulfilled. It has affected the child's fourth most important need, esteem needs, studying and all that is not actually the interest, and that need is not there anymore with the child. Okay. So you have to be mindful about all these things. Then only that you can actually play the role of the teacher, that understanding comes to you. So what are the implications for you? Assumptions, right? Human beings are motivated by a hierarchy of needs. Needs are organized in a hierarchy of propensity in which more basic needs must be more or less met prior to higher needs. The order of needs is not rigid, but instead may be flexible based on external circumstances. Or ඒ විදියටම වෙනවා කියලා කියන බෑ, but that is a kind of general thing. Most behaviors are multi-motivated. Okay. Now, of course, I have my people leaving. It's only 5 more minutes. Can I actually, it's an abrupt ending. I will finish my lecture today in the meeting. Now it's 9:25, 5 more minutes. We will meet next day. Is it okay?
Okay, madam.
Right,
Okay,
okay, because I want to say bye to them. Okay, dear, thank you very much. We'll be continuing. Okay.
Okay, madam. Thank you, madam. Good night, madam.
Thank you. Good night. Bye-bye.